Everybody, this is Allison from Alleycat Creations. How are you? I'm tired. It's been raining. I can't blame it on Mercury retrograde either because that ended. We're still in the shadow period. We're almost out. Spirit gave me some ideas. As I have a ton of books. I have more over here on this side that I was like, what am I going to tackle next? The Emerald Tablets was good. I hope you enjoyed my adoption story. I got emotional, not because my parents are crossed over. They're with me at all times. That's not, it's just reliving that trauma. I'm healing. We all are still going through healing, and I'm fine. It just sucks with my 3D moving to 4th, still living in a 3D matrix, that I have to endure all the nonsense I still have to endure. I feel like I have paid my debt. I already hit rock bottom once. This is 2, and this is rough. With more death, destruction, and hell. I don't know how much more I can take. But I'm back, and I'm gonna continue as long as I possibly can. So, getting back to spirit. I watched my neighbor's dog, and I've been waking up super early, which I haven't done since I went to work. And my cats are being destructive. I love them to death, but they wake me up early too. So, and then I'm a night owl. I get a lot of my downloads. Here she comes. I get a lot of my downloads like early in the morning, like 3 a.m.-ish. So that keeps me up. Hang on. So Ethan Cat's in her spot. We'll see what goes on, but as long as you can see me, that's okay. So I did an Enuma Elish reading, which not too many people watched, but it's very important that you watch that because I'm going to continue with it today, because the next topic, okay, she's not putting butt in your face. The next topic that I want to head into, I know my favorite Jason has been talking about the 2022 portal. And who's coming back? So, in order to understand the Anunnaki, you have to go back to the Enuma Elish. I also feel like they do appear as well in the Emerald Tablets, but they're not defined in there as much as the Enuma Elish. So I'm going to tackle some, I know I already read the 7 tablets. I'm going to go into, like, there's a volume 2 that has some description I'm going to tackle. And then maybe not this video, because sometimes I can rant on and on and on. But I got this book, The Anunnaki Final Warning to Earth and Their Return in 2022, the 5th edition by Maximilien de Lafayette. So there's some juicy little tidbits in there. I already started tabbing off some places to read off of. I also have other resources and stuff that I'm gathering. So that was a lot of my day today, trying to figure out where I wanted to bring it, what to conceptualize, visualize, and bring together, if that makes sense. Say hi, everyone. I'm an attention whore. I don't like listening to my mom because I'm stubborn and old lady. I'm Captain Morgan of my own ship. She's going to be 17 years old, and she has the same birthday as me. There she goes. So I feel that with what my favorite Jason has been saying, and then tonight on Tarot by Janine. Now, there is no doubt in my mind, looking at the when it's not raining and seeing the placement of the constellations and the planets, what have you, that the moon has been changing places in the night sky. And Jean-Claude asked her and showed her a picture of what looked like a moon, but her cards picked up it wasn't. And there is speculation on what that could be. Could it be Planet X? Could it be Nibiru? But she said it comes with benevolent army coming to help aid us. And then I pulled, and again, just putting this straight out there, I pull my oracle cards because that's how spirit really, like, spirit knocks it out of the park with the cards, the oracle cards. Tarot, there's a disconnect there. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it to why I'm not able to retain, and tarot cards have all different types of meanings with different decks, but like overall it's like a lot of cards to like memorize. And I don't like to memorize. I like to make a story and get the feeling off of them, and I just don't feel it. But my junkie box, I pulled cards, and I have to use a little booklet, which is embarrassing, but it is what it is. I'm still learning. We all have things, and I know that eventually my talent will be runes. For the life of me, I had a book that a couple of years ago, I wrote in a big journal, beautiful drawn out runes and the meanings and the different books with the different meanings and perspectives, and the Elder Furthark and the other aspects of that, and I can't find it. And I need it. I know most of the runes and their meanings, but like to get in depth. And when I find that, I'm going to get into that. But I got the Rune Tarot deck that I'm able to read much better because I understand the majority of the runes shown in the tarot cards. But I did a little reading, and her information's correct. Whether you want to believe in tarot or not, I sometimes pull pendulums out. My spirit guide was leading me in the right direction. I think they didn't want me to be freaked out. But I also know that I was under attack. They were trying, not in the sense that anything is going to happen to me. But when you are a bright light, they attack. They try at least. And they're not successful, but they do put me off my path for a little bit. because I constantly have to keep grounded and bubbled and Merkabah, and I wear a crystal quartz. I want a bigger one. I have a bigger one, but I want a bigger necklace, and I can't find a bigger one. Like, I want a nice chunky one. So yeah. So I'm going to read some parcels of that volume 2 because it deals with everything that's going to follow. Just like the Emerald Tablets, like the arcs being discovered, going from dark to light, us emerging and ascending, it's all there. It just needs to be interpreted, and the same with the Enuma Elish and our cosmic galactic friends. Now, again, with the law of one states, everything has a polarity. You could be a service to others or a service to self. And there's good and bad in everything. So there is good Anunnaki, there is bad Anunnaki. And it's not bad, it's just negative forces. The same goes with any other race. There's good Pleiadians, there's not so good Pleiadians. Like the Orion constellation, there's, they say the Orion is the bad, but there is a major group in there that is good. So if you ever are the starseed from Orion, don't be upset because you're not of the negative polarity or of the positive. There is positive entities in Orion. There is positive entities in the Pleiades, but there's negative as well. So just keep that in mind, because everybody feel like when people put the casing around a species of ET, and I don't even think I think they're interdimensional. To be honest, I honestly don't think they're extraterrestrial outside of the ice wall. I believe that they can go interdimensionally. So there we go. So before I get to that second volume with the parts that I want to read, I tabbed off something that I want to keep reminding everybody about when it comes to being lied to. I know it's not easy, but this is from the first part, and this is Hebrew parallels. In the Hebrew account, lights were created in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and to be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. In the Babylonian poem, also the stars were created and the year was ordained at the same time. The 12 months were to be regulated by the stars. The moon god was appointed to determine the days. As according to the Hebrew account, 2 great lights were created in the firmament of heaven, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser to rule the night. So according to the Babylonian poem, the night was entrusted to the moon god, and the moon god's relations to the sun god are described in detail. Marduk is stated to have established for the gods the bright heavens. For the stars of heaven he upheld the paths, he shepherded He shepherded all the gods like sheep. Think about that really deeply, very hard. The firmament, Babylonian system. And yes, I have a lazy eye. When I was little, I had to wear an eye patch for a very long time. I might have to do it again. Not looking forward to that. So this is, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I think it is owed some reading. Volume 2, the forward. The Enuma Elish has received renewed interest from modern researchers delving into the origins of mankind, the Earth, and the solar system. It is a story first written down by the ancient Sumerians thousands of years ago. Over the centuries, a copy ended up in the Library Aniv in the 7th century BC and was uncovered by archaeologists in the late 1800s. Written in cuneiform text and preserved on 7 clay tablets, the entire story was called the 7 Tablets of Creation. After being translated, the story revealed how the planets were to be aligned, how a cosmic catastrophe affected the Earth, how mankind came upon the scene, and how the gods played a role in it all. Before there was man, it would seem obvious that other witnesses were needed in order to tell the story, provided the story is actually true. Those witnesses were the gods. The words Enuma Elish actually mean went above. And this is the detailed story of the gods before and after coming to Earth. They had human-like personalities and were described in human form, coming to Earth, settling it, and ultimately manipulating and ruling over mankind. In other words, this was an advanced race of human-like beings having enough advanced technology and know-how to get here. To the degree that simple humans consider them as gods. Later advances in our own sciences, especially in biology and genetics, have revealed clues to our past and how we may be influenced by those with higher knowledge. Some Assyrian commentaries, which were also discovered, have been included, as well as ancient Assyrian legends of the temptation of man and the Tower of Babel. Ancient astrological literature, which relates to the creation stories, is also including, plus a fascinating prayer to the god Ishtar. Again, they just made it abundantly clear. How is this formed? How did we come about? And you have to think about it in this way. Way before Yeshua came to Earth, there were people occupying the planet. They were ancient pagans. And I don't, a lot of people have different theories on that. Like Odin and Thor are in Oaspe. They happen to be around way before Yeshua. Those stories are very similar. The Norse stories are very similar to the Vedic stories. The Native American stories in America and South America. The stories are all the same, with gods and chariots, riding with animals, and all kinds of fun, what we would say mythological stuff. Even the Greeks, the same thing. These people existed way before Yeshua came incarnated on the planet. So just think about it. This was way before his time. And these people were manipulating the planet back then. Way back when. So you have to ask yourself, who was in control when Yeshua came? And yes, the law of one states it loud and clear that Yeshua and everybody that you hear and read in the Bible, they had good intentions. They were trying to spread the law of one. They were trying to spread Creator's word. Absolutely. There's no dispute in that. But there was manipulation. A lot of it. And not human infiltration. It says it. I think it's very important that we understand that. It's not to take the word, the words are the words. They've been trickled down and edited and made into interpretation. Yes. Are the words all legitimate? No. But a lot is. Not taking away that from anybody. But a lot has been manipulated and disturbed and taken out and perceived upon in a negative light. Creator has to be neutral in everything because there has to be balance. Like I said in other videos, one life you are the victim, the other life you're the aggressor. One life you're rich, the other life you're poor. And that's for soul growth. That's to understand both sides of the coin. That's to gain the balance that we all need. So, sure, one God in one book might be wrathful and sacrificing and doing and telling people to kill. That doesn't sound like a God that I would like to follow, to be honest. Thou shalt not kill. If that was Creator's words, that should mean every being on the planet, not just some select few. It's very important to realize that aspect when reading things. It just said in the introduction to this, and this is all transcribed and translated. So I'm not going to read all of everything, but there are some sections that I'm going to focus on more. Other accounts of creation. Another version of the creation of the world by Marduk. The holy house, the house of the gods, and the holy place had not yet been made. No reed had sprung up, no tree had been created, no brick had been laid, no building had been set up. No house had been erected, no city had been built, no city had been made, no creature had been created. Nip-Peor had not been made, Ekor had not been built, Erich had not been created, Eanna had not been built. The deep had not been created, Eridu had not been built. Of the holy house, the house of the gods, the habitation had not been made. All lands were sea. At that time, there was no movement in the sea. Mind you, what it just said, there was no movement in the sea. Then was Eridu made, and Isegal was built. Isegal, where in the midst of the deep, the God dwelleth. I am not trying to pronounce that name. It is really long. The city of Babylon was built, and Isegal was finished. The gods, the Anunnaki, he created at one time. The holy city, the dwelling of their heart's desire, they proclaimed supreme. Marduk laid a reed upon the face of the waters. He formed dust and poured it out besides the reed, that he might cause the gods to dwell in the habitation of their heart's desire. The gods, the Anunnaki, Marduk created at one time. Now, the perspective could be that he himself was Anunnaki and he created more of them. But only time will tell how correct that is, because I really feel that they were not from this planet, that they exhibited and inhibited another landmass, and that they came here. I don't think Marduk created the Anunnaki. And if he did, it was to procreate with them, leaving his seed in them to create more and more. That's just my opinion. He formed mankind. The goddess Aru, together with him, created the seed of mankind. The beasts of the field and living creatures in the field he formed. He created the Tigris and the Euphrates, and he set them in their place. Their names he declared in goodly fashion. The grass, the rush of the marsh, the reed, and the forest he created. The green herb of the field he created. The lands, the marshes, the swamps. The wild cow, her young, the calf. And it just goes on about all the things he created. With a cup of pure water from the deep shalt thou purify the way. By the incantation of Marduk, the king of the hosts of heaven and earth, may the abundance of the land enter into thee, and may thy decree be accomplished forever. So this is like duties of men. The river of creation. The Chaldean account of Genesis. He says the observed of this tablet is a fragment of the address from the deity to the new created man on his duties to his God. And a little later on, he adds, the reverence of the tablet appears so far as the sense can be ascertained to be addressed to the woman, the companion of the man, informing her of her duties towards her partner. The recovered portion of the sixth tablet of the creation series, however, a Neo-Babylonian duplicate, the text of which is published, and it gives you all the where it is. The reasons on which this conclusion is based may be briefly stated as follows. The recovered portion of the sixth tablet indicates that the description of the creation of man there given was very similar to the account furnished by Bercerus, and it follows that the greater part of the next text must have been in the form of a narrative. If Marduk gave man any instructions after his creation, these have been occupied only a small part of the tablet, but both the observed and reverse contain moral precepts, and the same is in the case with the volumes and the new duplicate. This is quite consistent with the character of Samus as the judge of heaven and earth, but he does not appear in this chapter in the creation series, where he's referred to merely as the sun, which Marduk created and set upon his course. In the duplicate, two of each of the tablets. This fact in itself is sufficient to prove that the composition has nothing to do with the series Enuma Elish. The text upon tablets of the creation series is never arranged in columns, but each line is written across the tablet from edge to edge. The characteristic applies not only to the copies of the creation series from, I'm not pronouncing that word. Sorry, I'm not here to disrespect anybody. Not doing it. But also to the Babylonian copies of all periods, and even to the rough practice tablets on which students wrote out extracts from the poem. If anybody follows Morg, he's the founder of Hyperianism. He talks about the divine feminine a lot and how it's lacking and missing in a lot of texts or was edited out. A woman's duties to a man should be as equal as duties from a man to a woman. And yes, there are roles each play for each other. Being said, yeah. It's a touchy topic. Let's put it that way. Moving forward, on some traces of the history of creation in religious and astrological literature. There is an abundant evidence to prove that under the late Assyrian kings and during the Neo-Babylonian and Persian periods, the history of the creation, as told upon the 7 tablets of the series Enuma Elish, was widely read and studied, and there can be no doubt that it exercised a considerable influence on the religious literature which continued to gather around Marduk's name. And fragmentary hymns and prayers which have come down to us, however, is the difficult to determine how far the priestly and popular concepts of Marduk were influenced by actual story of the creation as we know it, and to what extent there were molded by earlier legends and beliefs, and by Marduk's own position as the native god of Babylon. That actual phrases from the 7 Tablet of Creation series were made use of in other similar compositions and sufficiently proved by the fragments published at the end of Appendix 1. And in view of this fact, we may perhaps hear echoes from earlier tablets of the series and some of the phrases and attributes applied to Marduk in the contemporary religious texts. It would be impossible within the limits of the present work to attempt to exhaustive treatment of this subject, but as striking instance of such allusions to the creation story, reference may here be made in the fragment, which I believe has heretofore been translated. This is pretty broken up, but I will try to read some of this. Marduk, the director of the gods. Putting a pause on that, the Keys of Enoch has the offices and little roles that each one play. Just keep that in the back of your brain. At whose battle heaven quaked, at whose wrath the deep is in trouble. At the point of his weapon, the gods turned back. To his furious attack, there were no opponent. Almighty Lord, to whom there is no rival in the assembly of the great gods. In the bright firmament of heaven, his course is supreme. In Ikar, the temple of true worship, exalted in his decree. With the evil wind, his weapons blaze forth. With his flame, steep mountains are destroyed. He overwhelmeth the expanse of the billowing ocean. The son of Isara is his name, the hero of the gods, his title. From the depth, he is Lord of the gods of human habitations. Before his terrible bow, the heavens stand fast. Plague and destruction and tempest of all the Anunnaki and the Igigi. not just about the Anunnaki, it's also about the IGG. Yeah. I might have to dig into that too. I have mixed emotions about them. Were they the Cedar race? Who are the Cedars? Because it's not just the Anunnaki who contributed to our DNA and our creation. The IGG, Igigi, whatever you want to call them, the Lyrans, because remember there was an Orion-Lyran war, which happened way before this. And those races from the Lyran constellation zipped off out of existence to different planetoids and planets, and then the creation, the Pleiades was there, but they inhabited and terraformed a lot of the Pleiades and all of the seven sisters. A lot of them went to Orion and some other constellations in and around us. So where these little fun creators came into the fold is what a lot of people are trying to find and figure out. But being these tablets were found on Earth, I usually try to take the Earth man, woman perspective. I'm not going to read this whole thing. But it's good to note. It will be noticed that in the hymn describes the quaking of the heavens at Marduk's battle, the trouble of the deep at his wrath, and the flight of the gods from the point of his weapon. We have here an unmistakable reference to the battle of Marduk with Tiamat and the subsequent flight of the gods, her helpers. Marduk's supremacy in the assembly of the gods does not necessarily refer to the seventh tablet of the creation series. I really need glasses, guys. I mean, when anything is like idolatized, like fancy, my eyes blur. Okay, I can't. Or evil wind. Okay, it gave me okay, evil wind. And Marduk's flame are clearly reminiscent of the fourth tablet and the billowing ocean. We may possibly see a reference to Tiamat. Finally, the mention of Marduk's bow in 1.20 may be compared with the fourth tablet, 1.35, and with the fragment of the fifth tablet, which describes the translation of the bow to heaven and the bow star. Okay, that's confusing, but it really isn't. What constellation is there a bow, an archer? Orion. Hear me out. You look at Orion, you got the pyramids of Giza lined up, right? You have the 1, 2, 3, you got the Orion's belt. And from there, you have to look up, and there's Aldebaran. And then you look up a little bit into the Taurus constellation, and then you have the Pleiades. I knew I said something wrong. I'm going to go and retract what I just said. It wasn't a bow, it was a shield. So Orion is the hunter. I don't know. There is another constellation that has an archer, but he has a shield. Orion has a shield and a club. Yeah, I have to study more on my constellations again. But either way, it just hits that like Orion for me. So such references to the creation story are of considerable interest, but they do not add anything to the facts concerning Marduk's character, which may be gathered from the creation series itself. An additional interest, however, attaches to some astrological fragments, which I have come across, in as much as they show that a late period of Babylonian history, the story of the fight between Marduk and Tiamat, have received a very definite astrological interpretation. One of the fragments exhibits Tiamat as a star or a constellation in the neighborhood of the ecliptic, and moreover furnishes an additional proof of a fact which has long been generally recognized: the identification of the monster brood of Tiamat with, at any rate, some of the signs of the zodiac. The most important of the astrological fragments above refer to the made up of 3 pieces, which I've rejoined and its text is published. It goes into a lot of measurements and things of that nature. Sorry guys, I pre-read this and then my brain's going in different directions. So please keep with me. It doesn't say what zodiac, and that's why Orion keeps coming into my mind. Because it's a star system that we see. I at least see it constantly. There's only a few varied months that I don't see it directly, but for the most part, I see Orion a lot more, and the Pleiades, which is a little further away in spectrum to that. But I do see those both quite frequently. That's why I keep bringing it up. So Tiamat had conquered. He conquered. He took her sovereignty. Sounds like us. The tablets of destiny from Kingu he took in his hand. He created, and at the gate of the deep he stationed, that the deeds of Tiamat should not be forgotten. He causeth his fathers to behold. He plunged into the belly of Tiamat after he had filled her with the evil wind. Line 2 may be explained as referring to Marduk's conquest of Kingu after Tiamat's death without further fighting. though it is possible that it has some connection with the obscured expression. The text returns to Marduk's defeat of Tiamat and with the capture of the tablets of destiny from Kingu. And they're just like the person who wrote this is going back and forth with like the tablets itself, trying to make sense out of it all. But there was something in here I wanted to read. It is possible that a similar guardian was stationed by Marduk in order to restrain the waters of the deep. Apparently referred to the instructions given by Marduk to the gods, his fathers, in order that the deeds of Tiamat, her revolt and subsequent conquest by himself, should not be forgotten. It is possible that the instructions which Marduk is here represented as giving to the gods refer to their positions in heaven and the heavenly bodies associated with them. If this interpretation is correct, it follows that the later Babylonians, at any rate, looked upon the astrological aspects of the creation story as the accordance with definite instructions given by Marduk himself. While they believed that Marduk actually slew Tiamat and subsequently created the universe as narrated in the tablets of the creation series, they held that the association of the principal actors in the story with some more important stars and constellations was also Marduk's work, his object being to ensure that history of creation of the world should always be kept in remembrance. In this section, Marduk and Tiamat appeared in their astrological characters. Marduk probably as Jupiter and Tiamat as a constellation in the neighborhood of the ecliptic. The approach of Tiamat and the moon, and of Marduk, Jupiter, and Tiamat would seem to portend the sending of Abarubu or deluge upon the earth, followed by rebellion and tumult among gods and men. If unchecked, the wrath of Bel, Marduk, would result in the destruction of the temples and the ruin of the land. To prevent the sending of a deluge and to change the omen to one prosperity, the text enjoins performance, and there's some prayers. Okay, there's going to be a skip around. Found it. Now this is interesting. Kingu is introduced, but there is no other evidence of a connection between the creation series and this portion of text. Zu smoked and broken his wings. Evidently gives a quotation from a legend of the storm god Zu, which has nothing to do with the creation series. What name does that remind you of? Zeus? What was his powers? Thor, what was his powers? Think about it. Indirectly, however, this line proves that the other Babylonian legends were, like those of the creation, connected by the later Babylonians, with certainly of the heavenly bodies. The 4 lines inscribed upon the edge of the tablet give a portion of the colophon, from the last line of which we learn that the tablet belonged to a series, the title of which reads Marduk Sarpantium, and it's possible that other astrological fragments above described are parts of the tablets belong to the same series. The occurrence of Marduk's name in the title is in accordance with suggested connection between these fragments and the creation series. Interesting. There is a lot. A lot. A lot. But it's really interesting to just be mindful when I and we tackle the Anunnaki topic, that we know where it originated from, at least in cuneiform texts and tablets, that it was put down. So this is the last part I'm going to touch upon for today. And being mindful that I did read the 7 tablets. I did read them. And then I did some Norse God video with the Enuma Elish as well. I find when you look at the civilizations back then, a lot starts to make sense, and especially with Awaspe, the way the world was created through the eyes of this book is very similar to the creation in Awaspe, and is also, I'm still getting through Urantia. It's complicated and huge, just like a Awaspe, but very similar again in how it formed. And I also, when I did the video with the Norse gods, I did the creation beginning, how similar it sounds to this. And mind you, way back then, a lot of these civilizations were nowhere near each other, and there was no way to get to them. If you look where Norway and all of Scandinavia is, it's up in the Arctic. It's up there, right? It's freezing. Their creation story is similar, but there's no way at the same time the same similar stories were happening in India and the Middle East. No way. I don't buy that at all. So how did they have those similar stories? It's told in their language and their tongue at the time, the runes and the gods, and the same thing with the Vedics, and different gods each had different powers. And that subscribed throughout time until these civilizations kind of went, and then it became something else. And I feel like when I'm reading this, I'm just trying to put into context where I'm coming from. Whether I'm wrong or I'm right, there's a lot of people who deep dive into this and the Anunnaki way more versed than I am, giving all those people credit. I was always, sorry guys, I'm in pain. Always interested in this topic. Never had the resources to deep dive. But now I have the time on my hands to deep dive. I just find it very interesting when we're looking at the ET connection, the alien, whatever you want to call them, the connection to where they began in art, the creative stories, and they're here. It spells it out. It says Anunnaki. Where did that come from? Right? It had to exist before they wrote this down on tablets in cuneiform. Same with the Egyptians. Their spacecraft in the hieroglyphics. I don't want to hear that that's no. Elena Denon is an archaeologist and she worked in Egypt and she could tell you too. If you've ever watched Ancient Aliens, I find it very interesting that a lot of this information is not mainstream. To some groups, it's very mainstream, but a lot of people are coming across my videos like baffled at some of the stuff that's been written down. And again, I'm not here to tell you to believe in it or not. It's just something to pick apart and to really look into. I find it very interesting. And I, in an artistic expression, I have studied the artwork of all these cultures, not in an archaeological way, but interpreting the message the artist gave in sculpture form. I have plenty of textbooks, which I'm sure has been inverted to some extent, but you can't unsee a picture that someone took in the place that it was there. So that's a spin I can bring, my artistic critique on a lot of those structures. And a lot of the stories that the artists were talking about are things that we find what we call legends and myths. We have to remember at some point, humanity was dumbed down, poisoned, and controlled. Even though it states it, I've read it in here, that we were all to be slaves. That has not changed. It changes now because we need to step into our own power and wake up. We have to acknowledge it's a tough topic, but at some point, almost every culture has been exploited to some extent. But we've also been misdirected. We've had information hidden from us. We were told a lot of lies. A lot of things were edited and still continue to be edited today. If we look at what's going on in the media now, why can't you have your opinion? Just because you don't agree with someone's opinion and perspective doesn't make them wrong for having it. And what doublespeak is misinformation. There's always different perspectives you need to take in mind. Not everybody is correct, but you're supposed to have a hypothesis. You're supposed to go through the scientific method in order to come up with a conclusion, whether it's right or wrong. The most brilliant of minds making mathematical equations work, that takes some time. And there is always physicists and theorists out there, quantum physics and all of that. There's always a physicist doing an experiment that someone else failed on. And they're like, oh, well, you know, when I did this didn't work out, but maybe you have the solution to the problem. And then they work together. I mean, there's infighting with that too, because they all want credit. It's not about one person taking credit. It's about the collaboration of humanity coming together in the strongest of your own points to bring what could be the truth. And I think that's what humanity is pretty much missing, because we've all been bred to compete, to be, and healthy competition is great because it pushes you. But when you can collaborate with other people and bring your perspective onto the table, it shouldn't be discounted because someone else doesn't agree with it or thinks it's taboo. No. If that person has a thought, Creator put it in their head to think it. Did you ever think of that? As a little girl, and I'm being honest, and I'm going off topic, but I think this needs to be expressed because I'm being told that this really does need to be expressed. When I was a little girl and my mom asked me about why I'm not into the religion, you know, and I'm thankful again that my parents allowed me to choose my own path and they gave me the opportunity to do so. But I explained it to her in my little tiny body way that if Creator created me, Creator put the thoughts in my head to think them, to express them. If we are all aspects of Creator, there is no wrong thinking. You're just expressing what Creator had placed inside of you. And being the Creator that you are, you put that out, that idea, that thought out into the ethers, open up minds. And my mother was blown away and did not know how to respond to that. Now, does that mean you are right or wrong? No. It means that Creator put these thoughts in your head to learn. That's why we're on Earth, is to learn. Yes, there was other agendas and objectives that were handed on us that infringed our free will. But I have a feeling we were supposed to go through this hell to learn not to repeat it again. And then when we become Creator gods in our own right, when we ascend and we get to the maximum point of density, that we can start making our own universe or our own star or our own system, We then at that time know from both angles, both polarizations, what needs to occur and what went wrong, what went right. And even though you have to plan for both possibilities to happen, if there needs to be intervention, how do you go about it? What is the right and correct way to do so? I hope I'm making sense. But we're here all collectively because it's our time to be here and to know from the past in order to jump into the future. We need to know why we were lied to. Why was this information hidden from us? Why didn't Creator want us to know about all of this? Why the illusionary holographic construct of the matrix that we live in, LARPing through each level like World of Warcraft, going on journeys, doing quests, and then we get a side quest, and then we get to the raid, and we're with a bunch of people, and each of those people have a job, and one's healing everybody. There's a tank and 2 tanks, and then there's the DPS in the back doing magical spells and having their bows with their animals, attacking the evil deity god, and then you get some cash prize or you get gear. Okay, that's kind of what we're living in. I played World of Warcraft for over 7 years. I miss that game. I just can't afford to play it right now. But yes, I'm a gamer. But thinking in that way, you start off as a little child and you go through each stage of your life, learning, absorbing, taking in everything, experiencing things. Then when you get into your adulthood, you're expected to follow this obey cycle of eat, sleep, work, work, work. And then we'll gift you a vacation here and there. Here, consume, eat, consume. They didn't have it this way. I mean, life was way simpler back then. Life was way different back then for these people. They didn't have luxuries like we have. But with luxury and technology comes more complication. Their lives were very simple. And they were able to use their mind. They were able to have telepathy. They knew about sound and vibration and quantum physics way more than our quantum and I'm sure we have very smart people out there, but they had more concept of quantum physics and quantum entanglement in the multiverse than we will ever discover. They all put their minds together. It's seriously, the Norse myths, the Norns spun the web of fate. They knew about quantum entanglement. They knew about it. Thor, lightning. Zeus, lightning. There's intelligence higher than us upstairs helping us right now. But we need to acknowledge that they were here in our past, thousands of years ago, all collaboratively trying to make things right. And at some point we were infiltrated. And at some point we need to figure out where that infiltration happened. I mean, Ross says it, but there's a backstory before Ra did his and got the channelings that they did. There has to be a backstory. And it's up to us collectively to find out in our conscious lives now. in my opinion. I think it's very important. Because we can't repeat this nightmare again. As a human being, as someone who has rightfully stood in her sovereignty and has to live in a 3D nightmare with communists and fascists and Marxists who control New York right now, this can't happen again. It's coming out. The lies and the deceit are coming out. You just have to have the ears to listen and the eyes to see. And most of the people that watch me are already very aware. But those who will find this eventually will start to understand that there's a lot more to the universe than we think. And there is no one person that has the entire story. People have come very close to that story. But it's so massive because each culture has its own interpretation of it. And they're not wrong in their interpretation either. Ross states that different social memory complexes of the same density that he was working with at that time came and influenced different cultures and gave them different components of the law of one. And expressed love is an expression, it's an emotion, it's the obtainment that we need to have in order to reach fourth density in its totality. We're on sub fourth, in my opinion. So when I go into some of these books, there's a bigger agenda that needs to be tackled collectively. And I hope that I'm putting out the feelers out there, and if you are an Anunnaki expert and very well versed, please reach out to me, because then I can have you on in an interview where you can talk about your knowledge about the Anunnaki. I don't mind. My really good friend was on an interview. I let him have the floor. I just tinkered in and out to, clarify some things. I don't claim to be an expert in anything. I am a master of nothing. I used to tattoo. I was a Zumba instructor. I was a lifeguard. I taught teaching. I taught aqua aerobics. I was a paraprofessional. I was a dancer. I'm an artist. I do a lot of things. Okay, so I'm not a master in any of it. I'm learning just like everybody else. The day I stop learning is the day this avatar is dead. But there's people with higher knowledge than I have about the Anunnaki. And if you're interested, I would love to hear it. And so would everybody else. Because time is ticking. Earth constructed time. Okay. Off my ranting. So this is supposed Assyrian legends of the temptation and the Tower of Babel. It's important. And I'm going to have to skip around here and there. To contain an Assyrian version of the story of the Tower of Babel, the text is very broken, but from what remains, it would appear to be part of a legend concerning a god or possibly a king, who plotted evil in his heart and conceived a hatred against the father of all the gods. The passage occurs on which the supposed parallel with the story of the Tower of Babel was based, for these lines were believed to refer to the building of a tower at Babylon, and to describe how the tower erected by the builders in the day was destroyed in the night by a god who confounded their speech and confused their counsel. There is, however, no mention of a tower or building of any sort, and Babylon is referred to as suffering through the evil designs of the god or king. Moreover, the lines supposed to recount the destruction of the tower by night really described how the complaints of the oppressed people prevented the king, or possibly an avenger of the people, from getting any sleep at night upon his couch. The tablet is too broken to allow of completely satisfactory explanation of the nature of the legend, but the rendering will suffice to show that the suggested connection between the legend and the story of the Tower of Babel was not justified. As with the story of the Tower of Babel also has its claim that the Assyrian legend has been found, which presents a close parallel to the story of the temptation of Eve in the Garden of Eden. That the description of paradise shows traces of Babylonian influence is certain, and is not impossible that the Babylonian legend may at some future time be discovered, which bears a close resemblance to the story of the temptation of Eve by the serpent. The tablet, which has been supposed to contain the Assyrian version of the story, which one of the principal copies of the third tablet of the creation series, the closing lines of the third tablet recount how the gods gathered to a feast and Isar's bidding before the decree, the fate for Marduk, their avenger. The passage which recounts how the gods ate bread was believed to contain a reference to man's eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and Marduk was supposed to be described not as the avenger of the gods, but as the redeemer of mankind. This suggestion was never widely adopted and has long been given up, but it had meanwhile found its way into some popular works, and inquiries are still sometimes made for the Assyrian version of the story of the temptation. It is perhaps not superfluous to state definitely the fact of its non-existence. Just to show you. The tablets. It's really cool. Remember, it all had to start somewhere. We just have to figure out how we all came about and what is our future looking like. Because after this 3D, we move into 4D and time does not exist. We live moment by moment. We live in love and understanding. And then we obtain higher knowledge. And then we move forward. And it's very important to understand that we're going through that Renaissance period. And we all need to collectively come together to really push forward new thinking and new critical thinking. We've been suppressed so long that many of us are not thinking outside of the box. We're not looking, we're just watching people dictate to you how to feel and what to think. I know in what I resonate with, and you have to take what resonates with you. A lot will not resonate at first. It will not. It's not easy. But once you take your ego out of the equation and you say, well, you know what? It doesn't hurt to read. Doesn't hurt to look at this. It might, like the flat earth stuff doesn't know that's a psyop. Then why do all the books say it? Firmament, firmament, firmament. Why would they put it there? Just to mess with you? Or is that really there? I mean, that's just one thing. Like, do you ever think about, you read the book, the good book, and it says it, but you deny it because, I don't know, but it's there. It's there. I mean, the Norse talked about the 9 realms and 9 planes of existence. Planes. Time to look outside of the box. It's time to start thinking differently. It's time to open up your doors. You can crack it just a little bit to different ideas and different things that can open up your mind. I'm not asking you to believe anything that I read or anything that I say, but I read enough and I think outside of the box enough to know that there has to be some truth to what I'm reading. There has to be something there. The connections are clicking for me, at least for me. But a lot of people are starting to click into these things. And a lot more people are going to join the bandwagon. So let's join together. There's too much infighting right now. I think someone banned me off of their Telegram group for being inquisitive and curious about something that didn't resonate with me, and I'm reading it and I'm just like, what are you talking about? Why are you defaming and slandering other people when you have no idea and have not done the research enough on other people? There's a lot of that going on. So if you do follow me on Telegram, I'm only posting stuff that I resonate with, that I feel that you can get a lot out of. People, we're human and no one's perfect. And I bet you that many people, if you dig into their past, there's some pretty stuff and there's not pretty stuff. I have a history I'm not proud of. There's a lot of things that I did wrong, but I learned from those lessons. I made better choices after learning those lessons that they don't repeat again. Everybody has a past. A lot of people have done some things wrong. Some things are worse than others. And again, who am I to judge? Everybody serves a purpose in this world. You're either the lesson learner or the lesson giver? You're the person that's supposed to challenge somebody, or that person's supposed to challenge you. It's a give and take. And that's how it's going to be easier for you to forgive when you understand that component of life. Sometimes it's very hard to put that into perspective. I know there's a lot of people who used me as a doormat, used me completely. And then they vanished, never without a trace, never again. I never met anything to these people. But why were they in my life? Whatever I needed to give to them for a learning curve, I gave to them. And sometimes they gave me something and then they vanished without a trace. Adios, arrivederci, we don't need you. And that hurts. You don't want to be treated like a doormat. You know, and then sometimes I, in my own way, feel so muted when I write comments and chats, and it's just like ignored. Sometimes they're not, but a lot of the time, the information I'm giving might help somebody, and it's just ignored. But that's okay. Someone who needs to see it will eventually see it. But sometimes I do feel muted, and I do feel like what I have to contribute doesn't matter. Or there's like other people having an agenda that my input doesn't count because it's not a part of their agenda, when it should be everybody's agenda. It happens. But I'm very thankful for everybody who is following me. I'm starting to grow now. It feels really good. It gives me a sense of purpose. It gives me a sense of gratitude to everybody who listens to my words. And many of you have wrote to me that you're feeling it. You know, and don't be shy. It's okay to have a differing opinion. And if you have more information, please share it with me. If you want to come on with me, I'm more than happy to have people with me. I can do that. I can live as well. I had to pay for the Zoom for my job, so I still have that up. So I can go live on Facebook and YouTube. You know, if this goes down, I'm on BitChute. So I'm always to be found somewhere. So I want to say, if this resonated with you, please give me a thumbs up. This gets my work out to more viewers. I know a lot of people watch me, but a lot of people don't give me a thumbs up. You don't need to resonate with me to subscribe either. I also do oracle card readings. I do a lot. I try. So I'm going to work on the beginnings of what I want to deep dive on with the Anunnaki. I don't have Scribed because I can't afford it. But if people have it and want to forward me stuff to read, or you want to highlight whatever, please do so. I'm more than happy to take it. I have that book. And there's other information that I have that I will bring out. But this needed to be read first. So until next time, love and light. I hope all of you have a wonderful week. And I'll see you on the next one.